quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
In the studio with us today, Sheila Shipley Biddy. Now, I got to tell you, I have known this amazing lady for a long time, but I'm not going to say how long because we don't like to age ourselves. But we go back to the label days. We both worked at respective labels at the same time.
We did.
You are the COO and the Certified Senior Advisor for Music Health Alliance, which is what we're going to talk about today. Founded in 2013 by Tatum Alsep. Music Health Alliance serves 11,000 music industry professionals and their families and has secured over $50 million in healthcare cost reductions to heal the music. Sheila started at Monument Records back in the day, worked her way up the ranks at RCA and MCA, which is when I met you, to become vice president and the first woman to sit at the helm of a major record label in Nashville. Sheila, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate it.
So when you and I met, you were actually, I think at that time, managing an artist that we had, which was Jeff Carson.
Yes.
And things have slowly evolved and developed over the years. The record labels aren't what they used to be. Management isn't what it used to be. Healthcare is definitely what it didn't used to be. And your organization, Music Health Alliance, it seemed to come along at the right time, 2013. You know, we start getting Obamacare and different forms of healthcare, and the music industry, we're all a bunch of independent contractors for the most part. How did this get started? Why did it get started?
Well, I think Tatum had worked at the record companies too, and I first met her when I was running Decca Records, and she was an intern at MCA. And so that's how she had known me and had watched me and mentored under me there. She went on to run her own management company when she left the Universal Music Group. And then from there went to Vanderbilt. And from there she started Sound Healthcare with a partner. And that was a for-profit company. And her heart was really in advocacy because she had been the mother of 2 twin boys that were born premature, spent a lot of time in the hospital. I think it was like 9 or 10 weeks. As she says, I was college educated. I had great insurance, or so I thought. I had a pregnancy rider. And she came out of that hospital and she owed over $500,000 in medical bills. And it was all because of the fine print. She didn't know you could only have, according to her contract, one anesthesiologist in the OR, or one nurse, or one specialist of this kind or another. So she was being charged multiple times and was faced with that, ended up liquidating her savings and her retirement accounts to pay the bills because she didn't know she could have qualified for financial aid to get that written off. So fast forward a few years later, and she's like, how do I make this work? She had left the for-profit world that had a lot to do with health insurance, so she had navigated that. Now Obamacare was being talked about, had just passed in 2013, and she was looking at that going, you know, we might finally be able to make this vision work. And she woke up in the middle of the night, and she said, this is what I want to do. She woke her husband up, who's an attorney, and said, will it work? Will it fly? Can I do this? And he said, yes. So the rest of, actually it was probably 2012, and then in 2013, she began to do the paperwork and launch the actual nonprofit. I came along in October of 2013. So I had been working for an independent record label doing radio promotion again. You know those days.
Oh, yeah.
And my territory was from Maine to Florida. So I had the whole East Coast. Independent labels, I generally will say, will last about 18 months before the investors figure out there's not going to be a return on investment within that period of time.
We've always said, how do you make $5 million in the record business? You start with $10 million.
That's exactly right. And it's not about how much you can afford to invest. It's about how much can you afford to lose. And if you can do that safely with a vision, you may be able to build a company, but it's not going to be overnight. And we know that.
Right.
So she called me. It was Labor Day weekend, asked me would I could even consider coming on board to work at this brand new nonprofit that was going to be working with people in the music industry. And she talked about navigation and navigators and advocates. And I'm like, wow, all these terms I'd never heard of.
And you've never worked in the healthcare business before.
Never in my life, ever. I mean, I had a healthcare crisis when I was 25 and almost died. But I thought, this sounds intriguing. You know, I was really looking at something that I could spend the rest of my life in, so to speak. And so we met, and she said, well, I can't pay you what you're worth, can't pay you what you were making at the labels. Matter of fact, I can't even pay you but half salary right now because we don't have the funds. So for the first 18 months, we worked for half pay, hoping we would get through to that point to get that back pay. And we struggled, and it was Tatum and myself and Kimberly Dunn, who had worked with her at Sound Healthcare and at MCA. And so it was kind of the infancy that started it. My first case that I was ever part of was a guy in Atlanta that had a brain tumor. Was being turned down at the hospital. They were trying to do crowdfunding to raise the money for him to have surgery.
Was he in the music business?
He was. He was a keyboard player, touring musician for an artist. But again, as we said earlier, if you're a 1099 employee, you're being paid by gig, or you're just being paid a flat wage to go out on the road. A lot of times taxes aren't withheld. You don't get benefits. Now, some bands will pay for health insurance, but most of them do not. So lo and behold, the law had just passed. It was November of 2013. We figured out a way to get him health insurance come January 1. The tumor that he had was slow growing, and Tatum talked to the surgeon at Emory Hospital in Atlanta and said, would he be okay to wait until January 1 to have surgery? And the doctor said, yes, we can manage his pain with pain medication, because it was an agonizing pain that he had. We can manage it. And so what we ended up doing, we enrolled him. He was one of our first clients. We enrolled for insurance through healthcare.gov. Because of his income, he had no deductible and maybe $1,700 out of pocket max. We raised the money through grants with like Music Cares to pay for that out of pocket. We had already talked to them if he had any difficulty getting off the pain medicine, that they would be in the wings to help him transition in care to stabilize again without pain meds, and they were good to go on that. And then we found some other grants, because he worked in multi-genres of music, to tide him over while he was rehabilitating and getting back on his feet, and he was out touring that fall of 2014. So that's just one story of the things we do.
Music Health Alliance, when you go to the website, I mean, it's so multifaceted that you dig deep and still find new things. Is it just for musicians, or is it for anybody within the music industry? What is it, or maybe I should say, who does it encompass? Anyone
within the music industry that makes their living in music. So even if they're a videographer, but they're primarily doing music videos, sure. A photographer that goes out and shoots concerts, or their primary business is in music, we can work with them. So an artist manager, a tour manager, a bus driver, a stylist, if their work is working on concert tours and videos, yes, we can work with them as well. Label executives that get displaced from as we know, from their jobs and are transitioning, not sure where they're going to go, we can help guide them, talk to them about Cobra, talk to them about what's going to bridge them between there and the next gig that they're going to have or the next job. So I've had a few actors. I've had some in musical theater. I've had a couple of television actors that I've worked with. So it's really entertainment. When the word musicians comes into play, you think about touring musicians, but it's more than that. It's session players, songwriters, music publishers, really anyone that touches on music we serve.
Is it just the Nashville community, or is it all over the United States?
It is nationwide. We're not in Europe or anywhere else, but nationwide in all 50 states. I think right now we have clients in 44 states in all genres of music. And during this COVID-19, we've had an influx of clients that have found out about us from New Orleans, from Miami, from New York, Brooklyn, a lot in California. I think at one point there were 30 states that we had helped people, and what our COVID-19 statement has been is to help try to stay within our mission, but what we're doing is either paying up to $500 for their health insurance premium, or we're doing it in grocery cards to help them buy food. So we've done cards, we've done over $150,000 that we've given out in all these states that covered either a Kroger card or Walmart card or a Trader Joe's, depending on what area they live in. And so, as you know, at Walmart and Kroger, you can get your medicine there, your prescriptions. You can also get your gas. So a $250 gift card can go a long way. And then come back in a month and we've given a second card. So we're right at $150,000 in that. And Spotify came on board as a partnership that they will do matching funds during this campaign. So anyone who has it on their Spotify page that Music Health Alliance happens to be their nonprofit partner, fans can make donations. We see $5, $10, $100, $1,000, that come in. Those dollars are matched monthly by Spotify as long as the money. I think there's 5 or 6 partners that they have. And that goes a long way to go back into the community and to provide the programs and services we have.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for our sponsor, and then have some more conversation with Sheila Shipley Biddy, who is the COO and Certified Senior Advisor for Music Health Alliance.
Hi, this is Jack Foreman with Bicoastal Productions. Thanks for tuning in to the business side of music with host Bob Bender and its plethora of industry experts. Folks like me.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right, everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
Hi, this is Tom Sabella, the creator, founder, and co-producer of the Business Side of Music podcast. It's loyal listeners such as yourself that make our podcast successful. Take the time to sign up for our weekly newsletter. Not only does it contain information on upcoming podcast episodes, but also informative tidbits on the music industry and even bonus items that we give away. All you have to do is sign up at businesssideofmusic.com and we will send you Larry Butler's new singer-songwriter rulebook. That's it. All you have to do is go to businesssideofmusic.com, sign up, and we will send you Larry Butler's new book. Thanks to all our loyal listeners. We love you.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Sheila Shipley Biddy is sitting across from us here in Nashville, Tennessee. Music Health Alliance, we were talking about COVID-19 before the break. That has really, besides flipped the industry upside down, but a lot of people, and we're going to focus on the people that work within the entertainment industry. I just read yesterday that Cirque du Soleil has now filed bankruptcy. They've let 3,500 people go in Las Vegas. Of course, all the productions are shut down. Broadway's now announced they're not starting back up till 2021. I talked to a buddy of mine who's a bus driver, Terry Russell, who said the bus business is just, those guys are hemorrhaging money like there's no tomorrow. This is a very tough time for anybody that's in the industry. Healthcare isn't really an option. I mean, you get sick, you got to take care of it. How does someone who's looking for health insurance or is looking for some form of assistance, and maybe I should back up a little bit and say, so Music Health Alliance provides
guidance more than anything. We provide solutions. And what we try to look for is whatever that individual circumstance is. They call up, they say, well, I don't have health insurance. That begins a different kind of conversation. If they're looking for health insurance, we have to try to identify what the need is. If they currently, like in Tennessee, if they're healthy, if they aren't taking both blood pressure medicine, cholesterol, and a bunch of other things, they're not diabetic, they may qualify for a Farm Bureau plan, which is a traditional plan. You still have to answer about 200 health questions. But if you're accepted, the premium's pretty low in it. And you won't get canceled as long as you pay that premium. That's one way to go.
Now, that's primarily just for Tennessee?
That's primarily in Tennessee. But in other states, there may be some other things like that. If, due to COVID-19, using that as an example, many of the states across the United States reopened their marketplaces for health insurance during this time. Some are still open. Some will be open through August. So if anyone has ever thought about getting health insurance, they should check and see if their state exchange is open. And if so, it might be a good time to get health insurance. The next open enrollment starts November 1 through December 15th. So income is real important. And as you know, there's a lot of variables in the music business, and fame does not equal fortune, right, as we know. And so with that, there is a minimum income that a person makes to qualify for assistance. And this is the biggest mistake we see folks make. They'll go in and put $10,000 as their adjusted gross income after write-offs. At $10,000, let's just use the healthcare.gov, it's going to spit out and quote you a full price plan. It's going to tell you that you will pay $1,200 a month for that plan.
Wow.
Now, if you had put $12,500 adjusted gross income, you might have qualified to get that same plan for $25 a month or $50 a month. So that's usually one of the first things that's a trigger when someone says, well, I couldn't afford what they said my insurance was going to be. Well, what did you use as income? Well, this is what I use. Well, it's too low. It sounds amazing, right? It's too low and you can't get subsidy.
Yeah, it's like upside down.
So what happens if you put in the $10,000, using Tennessee as an example, and this would apply to a lot of states, $10,000, they quote you full price. They send your application to the state of Tennessee to qualify you for Medicaid. Tennessee didn't expand Medicaid, so you're SOL. You will not get anything. Now, what we might say to that same person is, can you take less write-offs? We all know there's adjustments we make that are business write-offs. Could you take a few less write-offs to get to that $12,500 adjusted gross? And most of the time they say, oh, yeah, I can talk to my CPA or I can talk to whoever. It's worth it because they may save $24,000 a year in premiums. So we kind of navigate that and kind of guide and research and figure out what's the best for them. Now, the most you make for that same one individual household is about $49,000. So somewhere between $12,500 and $49,600, that's in 2020, you're going to qualify for some kind of subsidy. And so we look at that and see what that means. And then we talk about the plans. Do you want a high deductible plan? There are a lot of plans that are zero. They're not going to cost them anything. So they're going to get an annual physical covered at 100%. If they're not taking medicine, maybe they're young, maybe they don't go to the doctor that much. They can get a plan for zero. Their physical is going to be covered. If they go back a second time, maybe they're going to pay $100. As I say, if you're coughing up a lung and you need to go back and see what's going on, the doctor visit, cash visit might be $100. So that's a great way for them to go, and there's no out-of-pocket monthly cost, but they're covered, they're protected. On the advocacy side of that, if they do have a low income and if they were hospitalized due to a car accident or a bus accident or something happened, that out-of-pocket max this year is $8,150. So then we would try to look and see if that individual, should that happen, would qualify to get that hospital bill totally written off. So if they're below 250% of the federal poverty level, they can get 100% write-off. And the hospitals won't tell them that.
Yes.
They don't volunteer it, let me say that. There's a few that I've had counsel them if people ask, but most of the time they don't volunteer that.
It's much like the cell phone company who's in the business to make money. They won't tell you the best plan. Mm-hmm. Hospitals, I get it, are the same way. But there are options out there, but you have to do the research. If you're a musician, and I'm going to say this, a lot of musicians are not good business people. They're creative, they're artistic, they're left brain versus right brain. This is a great program because you're doing all the heavy lifting, you're doing all the legwork for them to help them figure out what it is they need to do, where to go, and how to do it.
Yeah, I know what questions to ask. So when they call, I had a guy the other day called about Medicare, and he was a bus driver, as a matter of fact, and he's looking at trying to retire at 62. And his wife carried the insurance. And I guess for months he's been reading about plans and trying to figure out health insurance for her and health insurance for him till they get to 65. And so he just caught me on my cell phone and started asking questions. And I started answering questions for him. And we got done. He says, "My gosh," he said, "you're an angel." He said, "I feel like I've gotten more out of you in like 15 minutes than I've gotten out of all the research in 3 months. It finally makes sense. I finally know that I have a plan." So now, whether she retires in October or at the end of the year, we'll talk again and we'll figure out what that plan is. And I'll help him get that application made, and we'll figure out what's the best plan for him with his doctors and with his hospitals being in network. And the best thing about all this is our services are 100% free.
And I was going to bring that up. You're not health insurance agents. You're not life insurance agents.
We're agents.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Because we are licensed agents by the state of Tennessee. We've been certified. We take our test, our continuing education, but not because we're trying to sell you something.
Because you're not selling a particular plan.
No, we don't have a particular plan we're selling. I could care less what plan that you might want unless it serves you.
And you're not representing a particular company or a series of companies.
No.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the benefits of each one and the downside to each one. And ultimately, if somebody asks me, which plan should I do? That's up to you. Some of those plans, they'll pay a little bit of commission, but we don't get it. It goes directly into an account at Music Health Alliance called the Jackpot. Do you remember Cowboy Jack Clement?
Yeah.
He was one of our first believers, and they did a fundraising show that raised about $14,000, and that was one of the first gifts to Music Health Alliance back in 2013 that started the launch of Music Health Alliance. So from that, we can write checks and pay for things that others can't pay for, just like those grocery cards. That's one of the things, like if you get a Music Cares grant, they will pay the vendor. They'll pay your electric bill, your rent, your a medical bill directly to the vendor. But they can't pay a check to you. They can't help you with groceries. They can't help you with the medicine. They can't help you with those small things that don't go directly to a vendor. So our Jackpot Fund, which is funded by commissions, is something we can pay back into the community. I helped a stroke patient get a recliner because he was paralyzed on one side and he needed the one side to pull up. We had a breast cancer A&R lady that was, her mattress was concave, her couch was sunk in, and we helped research and get a mattress for her out of that fund. So these are things we can do, or pay small bills.
They're small things, they're simple things, but they're so important, especially if you don't have it in your budget or your resources or means to take care of it yourself.
Exactly. And that peace of mind is also part of that, allowing you to be creative. I walk the journey with a lot of clients that are facing cancer, as we all do. We all have clients that have been that way. And I remember one wife who's done a video for us. I mean, I could say her name. It was Billy Block's wife. And Jill said at the time, and she did a video, so this is public. Normally, we wouldn't even say a person's name. But she said, you gave my husband back to me. You allowed me to be a wife. You allowed me to love him, to love Billy, to be his partner, instead of worrying about how am I going to pay these bills? How am I going to get him to the right doctor? How am I going to pay the rent? You know, we sometimes lay out a plan for a year. You know, we'll help figure out if we can get grant money and what can be paid from that. Okay, we can pay the rent for 6 months. Okay, we can pay the utilities from this grant for this long, and your health insurance and whatever. So we're sitting there trying to build a plan that takes that load off, that lets them deal with their husband or wife or child during that time.
Be able to take a breath.
To be able to breathe, exactly.
Speaking of taking a breath, we're going to get another word into one of our other sponsors. In the studio with us today, Sheila Shipley Biddy, who is the COO and Certified Senior Advisor for Music Health Alliance. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about her book. She's got an autobiography. And knowing this lady, I can tell you right off the bat, it's going to be a great read.
This is Claire Ratliff with Laughing Penguin Publicity, and you're listening to the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Wow, I just joined the Music Starts Here community. This is a truly hidden gem for anyone in the music business. Whether you live in Nashville or anywhere else in the world, Music Starts Here is like a GPS for your music career. This is the place to be if you want to get advice and direction from some seriously talented musical people who have been where you want to go. Music news, events, and a great big community with resources for artists, songwriters, musicians, studio and tech, along with music business advice from pros in the industry, all on one site. Make sure you get your free profile now. Go to www.musicstartshere.org. That's musicstartshere.org.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Sheila Shipley Biddy is sitting across the table from us here, Nashville, Tennessee, with Music Health Alliance. This program, it's designed to really just help that every person that's in the business. And I like what you say. You know, Billy Block, I remember when Billy got sick, and it was such devastating news, and your heart breaks for people like that. But we're all potentially there in the blink of an eye. This is something we should all set up as far ahead as we can. And I know sometimes it's a sensitive topic for us. I don't need life insurance. I don't need health insurance. And then boom, all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're a little bit older and your body doesn't move quite as well. Is there any age restrictions, or, I mean, how quickly should you get involved, especially if you don't have any health coverage? You should jump in pretty quick.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you don't have health insurance, I advise anyone during open enrollment this year, as of November 1, to try to get out and do a little research about what they need. If you're 26 years old, you're going to roll off your parents' plan if you're on a parents' plan. So if you are age 26 to 65, you can get a plan through your marketplace, out there through healthcare.gov or a local state marketplace like California runs their own. I think New York State has their own. But if you're younger than that, let's say you're a 19-year-old, you graduated high school and you came to Nashville or you came to LA or you came to Chicago to be a writer or an artist or a musician, you can get your own plan for literally next to nothing, depending on what your income is.
But you shouldn't wait till November to do the research. You should start doing the research now?
Well, they won't publicly put out the new plans until October.
Okay.
So really, it's hard to get insurance outside of that window. It's not impossible. They're short-term plans, but they don't really cover what you need. So we would recommend anyone to try to get that plan in place. People don't do it because they think they can't afford it. But the Affordable Care Act and the marketplace, the way it's structured based on income, anyone can afford it. And you can make adjustments. Let's say you thought you were going to make $15,000 a year and all of a sudden you land a tour in July and you're going to be touring that second half of the year, you can go in and modify your income, and it's going to go, your premium might go up a little bit, but you'll have less to reconcile at the end of the year. And those are things any of our advocates can counsel on.
Right. Let's change direction a little bit. I want to talk about your book here. You've written a book called The Music in My Rearview Mirror, My 30 Years in Music and More. We were talking at one point during the break. You come from a small town, about 4,000 people, moved here with your husband at the time, who was working for WSM Radio, and you got into the music business. Is that something you had planned on doing, or did just kind of fell into it? Because you seem to be a natural at it.
I think I fell into it. I had always wanted to be an author. I thought I would be a poet, and Mae Axton told me you needed to be famous to be a poet because people didn't read poetry, and it broke my heart. But it was probably well said. I still wrote prose and essays, and for my own sense of well-being. But I'd never thought about the music industry as a business. I loved music, but I really didn't know there was a music business. I knew about radio because that's what I'd grown up around, and television, and really wanted to be a television journalist. And that's really where I wanted to be. I wanted to do those human interest stories and go and investigate things and those heartfelt stories. And I remember I got my third-class radio license when it was required back in the day, and actually interviewed with the Easy Listening Station here in Nashville, and they almost hired me for a morning show, and then felt it was a conflict of interest because my husband at the time worked across town at a pop station and was working morning drives at WSM FM when it was pop. So I didn't get that and kept looking for a job, needed work because we just weren't making any money. I had a small child.
Because he was in the radio business.
That's exactly right. And so I heard about a job at this label called Monument Records. They were interviewing for a receptionist, and I went down. I got the interview. I interviewed 7 times with that label. 7 times I interviewed with that guy. I went on to interview at one point with Frank DeLeo, who ended up managing Michael Jackson. I mean, I heard words I'd never heard in my life being spilled out of those office doors and his mouth. I mean, I didn't get the job. And then finally, about a year later, they call me back I heard about they were still interviewing. I go back and no one had worked out. Everybody that they had hired had failed. So Laura Bainbridge at the time was married to Fred Foster. And she said, I'm doing the interviewing this time. And so I met with her and interviewed with her, and she ended up saying, that's the one I want. That's who I want. And I got the job. Was there 3 years, learned a lot, did a lot of the accounting work, royalty statements, writer statements, artist contracts. And even though I don't have a college degree, which is what I always wanted to have, I learned so much on a day-to-day that I studied everything. You know, why did they write the letter this way? Why did they phrase it that way? What does this clause mean? That it really was like on-site training, you know, and I tried to tell other young graduates that I trained through the years to ask the right questions, you know, keep a notebook, and when you have a question, bring it to me. I'll answer it because you're going to hear terms you don't understand. And it doesn't matter if you come out of school with a music business degree. Every day is different, and it's constantly changing, and you can learn from the people that you're working with. But that's how I got started. And the same week I started at Monument, they called me from Channel 5 and offered me a receptionist job there. And I almost took it, and I said, well, how much does it pay? And it was $25 less a week. And for $100 a month, I stayed where I was because that paid my child care at the time.
And made a big influence on the industry because you've done so much. I mean, you worked your way up through the ranks with RCA and MCA Records and worked with a lot of amazing artists.
Oh, I did. I got Alabama signed with RCA. I went on to change the way radio promotion was done at the time. I made it more of a honest business. People would say that radio promotion is not honest. Well, I was honest, and I never wanted my staff to lie about a record or lie about a situation or to tell a radio station one day it's a priority and the next day it's not a priority. You can say, I'm losing this record. You can say, if it's not working for you, I understand if you have to get off of it. But that doesn't mean it's not a priority for you. And the first time an artist manager calls a radio station and finds out that you said drop it is the day I've got a problem. And I don't want that problem because it's not true.
And a lot of that went on.
A lot of it went on.
I remember back in my days at the label from, 98 on, it was, you're working 3 or 4 artists, and if there's no room, you basically cull out the weakest one and to make room for the next one. And that's a tough pill for the artist to swallow. And if you have a good manager, now that bounces back into the radio promotions persons.
Yes, it does. And so you have to be, I had to be that kind of person, because it was not about, I had an A&R person walk into my office at Decca one night, and I literally was sitting at my desk with just crying. I've had tears, and we had lost a record. And he walked in and he said, until I knew you, I never believed that somebody outside of A&R, that creative side of the business, could care that much about a piece of music or an artist. And he said, but I've seen it in you. You grieve when you lose, and you give everybody else the credit most of the time when you win. It was just one of those things that, to me, it was not just a record. It was someone's life. I could see the extension of that life. I could see that young writer who became that artist and the money they had to take home to feed a family or buy a costume that they had to wear to the awards. It was their life. It was an extension of that. And I never took that for granted.
The business obviously has changed so much, even more so dramatically in the last few months, but over the last 8-10 years, especially for people like you and I who were in the business in its heyday when you couldn't print money fast enough for what we were doing. Do you miss that aspect of it anymore? It's something, and my wife and I have had this conversation. We can't relive it. It's done. It's probably never going to get back to that. Is it something you miss?
I have a lot of people ask me that. Is it something I miss? You and I saw the heyday of Nashville when it was at its best. I can remember sitting where my office was looking out on Music Row and seeing young writers with guitars in hand in their briefcase or their bag with their CDs, dropping them off at the office, and looking across the street at bungalow houses that writers were sitting on the porch with their guitars writing songs at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of those houses are gone now. Yes. A lot of those places that we knew and loved have disappeared. The row has changed. Labels have moved off the row to downtown or West End or wherever, to Franklin, to Berry Hill. They're not confined like they once were. So that world, that ship's left the dock, so to speak. Do I miss what I did? I miss the interaction, the creativity of breaking artists and signing artists and hearing new music and hearing new songs. However, that being said, with what I do, it's amazing the opportunities I have to talk to young writers and artists and counsel them on things, or they'll ask me questions, or they'll find out who I am. And we'll sit and have long conversations about their career and where it's going to go and things to watch out for. Or I can say, have you heard of Sound Exchange? Is your independent project registered? Because you get paid as both a label and an artist. And if you own the copyright, you need to do XYZ. Thinking back to my management days of setting up distribution deals for some of my songwriter artists like Dean Dillon or others, John Michael, we found about $30,000 sitting out at Sound Exchange with him. He had never registered any of it. His manager had never registered it. So, now he's probably seeing funds coming in, from Airplay. So that part of what I do hasn't changed. I still get excited. I still have clients who bring me their CDs or their new music, or they'll tell me, hey, I'm on Good Morning America. Hope you tune in. And so I still feel like I'm connected in that creative way, in that passionate way. I'm not as much in control of their life, but I can guide them and talk to them about pitfalls, or say, I don't know. That's an area I don't know about.
The book, The Music in My Rearview Mirror. How can they get the book?
It's available on Amazon.com. It takes me through my childhood and the experiences I had growing up, all the way up to being at Music Health Alliance. There's a lot that's changed. I mean, I have another grandson now that's not mentioned in the book, and we now have another 6 years under our belt at the nonprofit. But I always felt like it's kind of an inspirational book. It's about overcoming adversity, about believing, and that's a lot of what we do every day at Music Health Alliance. You know, it's how I've transitioned into that, to give back to the industry, because I've been there. I've been on all those fronts. And it's just amazing when you see, I think there's 9 women at Music Health Alliance, not intended, it just worked out that way. You will not find a more compassionate group of women. And if you ever want somebody to be fighting for you, it's one of us, because they don't let go. They will not let go until they get a resolution.
Where does someone go who needs to find some insurance, to find some help? How do they find Music Health Alliance?
They certainly can go to musichealthalliance.com, and there is direction there on how to contact us. You can email us. You can call us at 615-200-6896, and you will be transitioned to one of the advocates to work with. All of our bios are online, so you can read about our background. Maybe you'll see something about someone and you say, I'd like to work with that person. We do everything from the individual health insurance to counseling about short-term plan if somebody needs that. We have one lady that does group health for small businesses, so like small publishing companies or a small management company. If you have 2 W-2 employees that are not related to each other, you qualify for group health, so sometimes people want to know that. And I do all the Medicare, so as people transition out of I also do the other insurance, but as they transition out of that, they come to me to understand what their choices are. And so I can help guide them and make it easy, help them to understand what their choices are and what's best for them.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
You are very welcome, and it's good to see you again.
Same here.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.